So unfortunately we're back home, not where I hoped the next update would come from. I was hoping to have loads of awesome track footage in the afternoon, but it wasn't to be, unfortunately. The morning was wet, we were sliding around a bit. It was really challenging to use the car in those conditions, cold, wet, the tyres just wouldn't get warm, so we had to be super delicate with the throttle, and quite a good test of the usability of the power. You're never going to be able to fully unleash that sort of power in those conditions, but it was drivable. You know, you didn't just spin up and go sideways as soon as you touched the throttle. At times you did, but it was something you could learn to drive around. So a great example of how drivable the car could be, and I'm sure once we've used it more in those conditions, we'll learn how to get the tyres warm and make the most of it. The afternoon, now it dried throughout the day really. And as soon as it got to the afternoon, there was something of a dry line. You could use more of the power, and as soon as we got going a little bit faster, we got triggered for the noise limit, unfortunately. We had used the car at Blighton last year, and right at the end of the day, when we went full bore and went right up to the rev limiter, when it backfired at the rev limiter, we triggered the noise limit then. This time, as soon as we got anywhere near using all the revs and all the throttle, we got pulled off the track. Blighton were excellent about it. The first time they just told us, we got a bit of a warning and said, you know, is there something you can do? Can you turn it down a bit, use less revs, and we'll try and keep you out on track. So we did just that. We limited it to, I think, about 7,500 revs at first. That didn't work. Last warning, we went out, limited ourselves to 6,500 down the straight where the sound meter is, and still got brought in. It was just too loud. So whether or not one of the back boxes might have degraded if with the supercharger on there's a bit more heat or some flames or things like that, or saying that the misfires probably misfires. The backfires, they probably don't help much in that regard, or maybe the fact that we've not got any fuel surge issues now. We're getting to full throttle quicker. Maybe that's just causing the sound to be an issue. I don't really know why, but fair cop. If it's too loud, it's too loud, so we need to do something about it. So we didn't get all that much track time in the afternoon. Poor Will came over from Cheshire. I think he had about 5 laps in the car. And then we got black flag for the last time. So a good day, but we didn't get the afternoon smashing around the track that we hoped for in the dry. The morning went well. In the conditions, it was good fun. So it was nice that we got the morning. The afternoon was lost really. So for the next track day, what do we need to do? We need to quieten it down a bit. You probably can't see, but there really isn't any room under there for a bigger box as things are. We could probably go across the back like a standard one, but we don't really want to damage the flow too much. So I think the answer is to cut out the boot floor and find a way to get a bigger back box in there. So that'll be a challenge before the next track day in May. Other issues, we got a strange feel through the brakes. I'd complained about this at the last track day and thought that it was probably the fluid. So we've been using ATE Super Blue or ATE 2000 or whatever it's called now. And I thought it was probably that. The fluid had been in there for a couple of years, and it's not the highest spec fluid anyway, especially not when wet. So I thought the strange pedal feel from the previous track day was just down to the fluid. Got it changed for some Motul 660, whatever it's called. I don't always forget what these things are called, but we got it changed out for that, and to be honest, it was worse. And I think it's the servo, because it felt like at times you would get the full servo assistance, and then sometimes you'd go for the pedal and it hadn't sank, but it just needed an awful lot of pressure. So it's really quite disconcerting and caused a few moments in that you just didn't know how much braking you were going to get. It only did it intermittently, and it didn't do it that often, but Blighton was definitely the place to experience that. So I think what's probably happened is the inlet manifold being pressurised from the supercharger means that there's probably no vacuum getting to the servo at times. It looks like there's a valve missing from either the inlet manifold end or at the servo. So we need to try and get an inline valve there, or something put back on the inlet manifold, so that we've got a constant vacuum in the servo, and we've got servo assistance. Because it's not ideal. We don't want to be going to Cadwell with that issue, so that's something to solve for the next day. So yeah, a couple of items to sort out. We're back at Blyton Park again in May for another of Frank's days, so we've got those things to sort out. Unfortunately, because we never really got it wound up and really going for it, there's not too much I can tell you about the drive of the car that we didn't already know. We know it's fairly vicious once you're on full throttle and up there in the revs. And what I can tell you is when you take the revs down just a little bit to about 7,000, it's a hell of a lot less potent. There were cars that we were catching in the corners, but when we were limiting our revs, we couldn't get past them. So we'd have people moving over, having seen us come past in the morning, and then we'd just be sat behind them because we just didn't have the power down at 6,500 RPM. So that was quite funny and quite frustrating, really. We thought people were being idiots, but maybe they just expected us to breeze past them, as we'd done previously. One other interesting thing that I took out of the day, interesting for me at least, I'm sure others won't find it quite so interesting. I'd read previously that Toyo R1Rs in 195/50/15 are, I think, the same compound all the way through, or a certain amount of the tread, as the R888s, and we've always found them to be absolutely fantastic in the wet and the cold, particularly those typically British winter track days where it's damp, it's not wet, but it's very cold, so it's difficult to get temperature into the tyres. And the 205/50/16s that we've got on this car now just could not get heat into them like we could the 195s. So it seems to ring true that the compound used just isn't the same as those 195s. So that's really, really interesting. I'm tempted to drop down to 195s just for that compound, because it works so well at winter track days. I've got loads of tread left to use up, and in all honesty, the driver's the weak link, so I really need to use them up and just not worry too much about going fast, but enjoy the challenge to car control. But it was an interesting thing to point out. If you're thinking of getting some R1Rs in 15-inch, go for the 195s. Don't be tempted by the 205s. Now, because of the issues we had with sound, I'd promised quite a few people some ride out in the afternoon, so sorry to anybody that didn't get a passenger ride. Hopefully next time, May at Blyton, we can take a few people out in the afternoon, but we didn't get out on track much, so sorry to those folks. We'll deliver sooner or later. We'll take you all out so you can experience the beast. So a slightly frustrating day, but an enjoyable day. A not so good day at the track is always better than most other days, so another good enjoyable day. Credit to Frank for organising a fantastic day. Loads of money raised for Macmillan Cancer, so that's it doesn't get any better. You're having a good day at the track and you're raising a load of money for a fantastic cause, so kudos to Frank for sorting it out. Great to see a bunch of like-minded individuals. Driving standards on the day were excellent, and everybody was super friendly, and which made it a great enjoyable day. So we'll definitely be back to the Frank's days, and look forward to seeing you all then.